during the course of our discussion. And to beat the heat, we have with us two industry veterans who need no introduction. One Bengali and one born and brought up in Calcutta. I'm glad I'm not discussing Rasagollas here, but something we all love. Movies, web series, cinema, and Bollywood. I'll start with you, Jayant Kripalani. You have done it all: theatre, television, serials, films, and now OTT. So, theatre now, the theatre culture in India might not be very rich, but the theatre scene is vibrant in many cities with a loyal audience. In eastern part of the country, we have open-air theatres in Assam, in West Bengal, in Odisha. We call it Jatra in Odisha. Despite cinemas and television and OTT, Jatras also, booming and flourishing. So, would it be fair to say that one art form kills another, or do you think that various art forms, be it theatre or web series, cinema, serials, they all can coexist as long as the maker understands the core of each form, understands the value it creates for the end consumer, and sticks to it while creating the product?
I think you just answered the question, didn't you? I don't think there is an art form that kills anything. So I would raise an objection to that question. An art form can only invigorate, can excite, can entertain. It can change views. I don't know if you'll agree with me there. It can do many things, but I don't think it can kill anything. It might kill a bad idea, but it won't kill another art form. So I think that should answer it. But if you go into any of these art forms as a practitioner, the ones that you mentioned, I think they're all a part of the same art form, really. It's just the scale and the way you tell the story is different, but the story is it, and the story is the art form. How you tell it is the art form. So I don't think it can kill, or it can only help another art form.
Rahul, Bose, you have recently been a part of two major OTT projects, a feature film, Bulbul, and the web series, Bombay Begums. I've not seen Bulbul. I absolutely loved Bombay Begums. What would be your initial thoughts on our topic today? Will OTT kill or revive the feature film?
That can't be the question. That can't be the question.
Can we reframe it?
Yeah.
Can
Can
you
OTT
reframe
kill or
it?
revive the feature film? No, that can't be the question. Because OTT has feature films.
Feature films in cinema halls?
So that's the question. Can OTT affect the business of films in cinema halls? It's difficult to assess, given the fact that there was a pandemic that has happened with the advent of OTT. But I think what's emerging is that the serious lack of viability of putting out a film that is anywhere in the region of being non-mainstream in the cinema hall will definitely lead to the quick and welcome migration of all those films onto the OTT platforms. So I made a film called Purna in 2017, which cost 7 crores. There was no OTT at the time. We had to put in another 4 crores, which is the very rock bottom minimum to actually put it into P&A, which is to promote the film. 11 crores, which means you have to make 25 at the box office. And of course it didn't. But in today's time, if I had made Purna, first of all, I wouldn't have made it without getting into a prior agreement with an OTT channel. So I go to OTT channel X and say, here's the script. It's going to cost me 7. They would have given me 10. I would have given them the film and walked away. Whereas here, after scrambling for cover, after getting money from different ancillary revenue streams, Purna finally ended up at a 12% loss. So it's really, really evident that if you have anything that doesn't headline a star who can actually recover the cost of production and the P&A at the box office, you will immediately migrate to OTT. So in that respect, it is the single greatest game changer in the entertainment industry in my lifetime, which is half a century. The single greatest. I can only think of a smaller wave like this that happened when cable increased the channels from 2 to 100. But even then, you had a choice of about 15 films you could see at one time on the 15 movie channels. Today, you can choose between 100,000, 200,000 titles at any point of time. So therefore, one part of the answer to your question is definitely, it's a boon, and all those films should migrate. But the more interesting part of the question is, what about the films that will ordinarily get you the revenue? Why would you then go to OTT? If you're so confident that you have the star cast, then why would you want to migrate to OTT? The first reason why you would not want to migrate is money. And that's 90% of the reason. If a film has cost you 100 crores to make, and you know that if you give it to an OTT channel, at the very maximum they'll give you 110 or 120, versus putting it out in the theater with a muscular star cast, where your overseas rights itself could get you 20 crores, where your music could get you another 10. And then at the box office, you have a very good hope, a solid hope of making maybe another 100. So you say, okay, I'll make 20 profit at OTT, but I could make a 50, 60 crore profit if I release it in the cinema halls. That's a chance you have to take. That's a call that each producer takes. In that case, all those big films have to address only this one question, money. And I said it's 90% of the answer. 10% of the answer is the stars. Do they want their film to be on an OTT channel, or do they want to be on the, as we say in Hindi, bade parde pe? And that, it's not a function of ego, more a function of, would my film look and sound better in the cinema hall or in OTT? And I think that would be the artistic consideration to take into account. There are many facets of this which we can discuss, but broadly I would say these are the two, this is how to divide that answer, the question.
Jayant, Kripalani, I would like to ask you as an artist, how much does it matter to you where the content is being released, where your film or your project is being released?
I don't give a sparrow's fart where it's released, frankly. You know, it can be released in the bazaar, in the new market, on the streets. As long as it's a good film and it's doing some entertainment, where the release is not important to me. What is important, one of the things, and I'm going to talk on the lighter side of it, because frankly, Rahul, I find it very difficult understanding money. So I'm going to bring it to my level, this discussion, which is very low. One of the things, and I'm correcting myself, that an art form has killed is the damn cinema critic. He is not all that hot anymore in the business. Because everybody who watches OTT, every single person who watches it is a critic, a film critic, or thinks he or she is a film critic, and immediately reviews the film, and immediately 100,000 people will see that review and react to the review, and the dialogue begins. I've seen this happen to television shows and to movies that are released. Everybody is become it's like cricket now. Watching a movie is like watching a cricket game, because everybody is an expert on cricket. In this country, there are a billion point whatever people. A billion of them are experts in cricket. And now, close to a billion, I'm sure, who are expert critics also. So, take back what I said. Yes, the art form has been responsible for killing something, which is a critic. But as an actor, as a performer, I love it. And I take OTT, two definitions of OTT into consideration. One is over the top, that is what we were discussing yesterday, which is over the air and over the top, the difference. And of course, over the top in content. You have people murdering people in different ways. You have love stories that are torrid. You have songs. Some of them are just a joy to watch, which you never saw before on the big screen. For various reasons. For me, over the top means that too. You can do what the bloody hell you want as long as you don't lose your creative outlook, or if it's, you can make out it's fun, but it's not filth. Filth I object to, but fun, whether it's sex or violence, or you can't take some of the violence that you see seriously, like you can't take some of the sex you see seriously on television, and some of the language they use. Well, if a 10-year-old turned around and said, "आप तो बड़ी चूतियाँ हैं," I said, "यार क्या बोल रहे हो?" He said, "अरे टीवी में तो रोज बोलते हैं अंकल, तो हम भी बोल देते." So it has as a performer, there are many things to thank and there are many things to be upset about, but by and large, one is very happy.
So the exponential rise of OTT, Rahul, has obviously been driven by the pandemic. And the pandemic is hopefully gone, but OTT is here to stay. But most of India still consumes their OTT content on their smartphones and not big 55, 75-inch televisions. So we might happily binge watch or watch a web series over a period of a few days or weeks or even months. But when it comes to watching a feature film, a big film, maybe a sci-fi film, fantasy film, an action film, the experience of watching it on a 6-inch smartphone might not be that fulfilling. So do you think at some point the audience is going to get used to watching films that way? Or the need for the big cinema experience, replete with popcorn and soft drinks and CTs and galis and hooting will always be there?
I mean, there's always going to be space for cinema in the theaters. But I think what's significant is to understand viewing behavior. So when we watch a film in the cinema hall, the experience is collective. When you watch a television serial with your family, so television made the experience social. Somebody's cooking, somebody's giving pakoras, people are chatting. When the ad break happens, you guys argue about, Munnu and Chunnu's wedding. And what OTT has done is it's made the experience personal. So from the collective to the social and finally down to the personal. Now the OTT experience is very far from collective, is very, very far from social. It's personal. What are you giving me right now as I wait for my plane to take off? So once you understand that, then you have to ask yourself, which of these three experiences do I want from this film? Do I want to have a collective experience? Do I want to have a social experience? Or do I want to have a personal experience? And believe me, every producer also asks this question. Is this film best suited to be a personal experience or a social experience with ad breaks, or it has to be seen concentratedly in a collective space in a darkened theater? That's the first consideration. And of course, as you very correctly pointed out, if it's a sci-fi film, if it's a film with, razzmatazz and, lots of special effects, obviously, you are going to want to watch it in its full glory. You're not going to need any convincing to go and watch one of those big sci-fi films in the cinema hall. Why would you watch Avengers on your phone? So automatically, the producer doesn't really have to think hard. So I think, in the first flush of OTT, what will remain solidly loyal in the cinema halls will be your big films. The films that are big on audio, big on video, big on special effects, and you want to go there for the experience, the all-round experience of your senses. But, and I can see a few tendrils of this emerging, and with your permission, I'm just going to, and I might be wrong in 6 months, but I'm going to stick my neck out and say there's a trend emerging that with the fact that OTT, because you can switch it on and off in 10 seconds and you have 100,000 things to choose from, has to be written better. Whether it's Narcos or Sarpatta Perambarai in Tamil, or whether it is Call My Agent in French, you're shifting depending on what holds your attention on the content. Doesn't matter who the actors are, you have no clue who they are, whether they are from Honduras or Spain or from Tiruvananthapuram. You're watching it because it's gripping you. And I think what's going to happen is that people who watch this are not some other people. We are the same people who go to the cinema hall. Yes, we switch our brains off because now we are watching the extravaganza. But do we always have to go in there and switch our brains off? Or will cinema makers and producers start to say, let's write them better? What excuse do we have not to write them better? And I believe that there might be a reverse migration. Not a migration. We'll always be bipolar or tripolar, so to speak. But you will also have cinema halls where there might be, into inverted commas, content that is more cogent, that is more coherent, that makes more sense. Because I've just been offered 3 films which I'm acting in, and I'm no big star. I can't hold the box office up. And all 3 films are for the cinema hall. And I thought, truthfully, my cinema hall career was dead. And apart from Dil Dhadakne Do, where I've played a supporting actor with massive stars, what have I done for the theatres in the last 7-8 years? Nothing. I don't justify that expense. I can't hold a 5 crore film. 10 crores after P&A. 25 crores at the box office. I can't hold that. So yes, 2 of the films are awesome pieces, driven by fairly well-known actors also. But one of them, there are 3 of us who are all, I would say, of the same kind of box office bracket. And all 3 of us have lead roles. So maybe, and as I said, I might be very wrong, maybe if we are writing it better for OTT, why can't we write it better and put it up in the cinema hall? Maybe. I might be wrong, but it's a few inklings of hope whereby people are saying, if they're watching some superb stuff here all the time, it's going to be tough to bring them back to the cinema hall unless we even write our spectacles better.
Can I just button here for a second, please? In the 60s or 70s, I forget exactly, there was a group, I think, called the Pink Floyd, who sang a song saying there are 16 channels of shit on my TV to choose from, right? You look slightly scandalized, but it's there in the song, so I have to say it. And I think there are now 500 plus, or whatever it is, channels of shit on my TV to choose from. And if they do not, as Rahul says, improve themselves, they're continuing to be, by and large, television of any kind, any platform, is the hungriest medium in the whole goddamn world. It just wants material. And I somehow suspect that your optimism, I hope it comes, but I think that they will soon be taking anything that is given to them because they have to fill up the time. And frankly, I don't mind occasionally acting in some garbage. I love it. So if it's good garbage, that's great. If it's bad garbage, well, I'll learn to live with it. But by and large, and I hope I'm wrong, and I hope Rahul is correct, you're going to have 1,000 channels of shit on your TV to choose from soon.
I think that's a very interesting observation made by Rahul Bose. And talking of Dil Dhadakne though, even though it was, as you said, a small role, you were so convincing I hated you. I think I probably still hate you.
Oh God.
So that brings me...
Thank you, I feel so good. I came all the way to Bhubaneswar in 36 degrees centigrade under this tent to be told that I'm still hated. So thank you. I will hold that very close to my heart when I catch my
Please
flight
take
back
it as
today.
a compliment.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. Just don't meet me after this, that's all, in a dark alley.
So, I'm going to ask you, you became a household name in the 70s, 80s. Oh my God, that's 45, 50 years now.
Yes, I'm an old
That's
man.
crazy, that's crazy
I'm an
long.
old man, yeah.
So, you did Khandan and Mr. Ya, Mrs. and G. Mantri Ji. Then what happened? Were you disillusioned at some point with the kind of content being made? And now that you're back again on OTT with the series, just that it's not on television now on another form.
No, I've always been an actor all the time at heart, and I think it's a marvelous profession to be in, but it's not the only thing that I do. After having done about 10 or 12 years of television, I'm not too sure whether I needed a break from television or television needed a break from me. I'll be very honest there. I think they got tired of me and they told me to bugger off in no uncertain terms, so I did. You know, when you don't get work, what do?
Was that more of bad garbage?
No, I didn't get work. I'll be very honest with you. I just didn't get any work after G Mantri Ji.
Do you think this is a really good time for talent in the industry now?
Yeah, and even for non-talent, if you look at some of the stuff. But the thing is that, look, I consider, at one level, I consider myself a Bengali, but not a good enough, I don't have a good enough command over the language to be an actor in Bengali television, Bengali OTT or Bengali films. But what has happened in the last 4 years since I moved back to Calcutta, I've been doing work only in Bangla. And so that means they are looking for, all right, let me put it different. I'm a fresh face in Bengal. So, and with a reputation of sorts, bring it in. So I'm getting the work and I'm thrilled to bits. My bills are being paid in ways that I never knew they could be paid. So I'm not complaining at all. And if I'm criticizing OTT content at the moment, it's not because I dislike it. I think it's just a sociological comment that's going to happen. And well, they'll learn to live with it. I'll learn to live with it.
Talking of Bengali content, there's a report that says that regional consumption of OTT is steadily growing, and by 2024. It's going to be more than 50, the regional content consumption is going to have more than 50% of the total share of the total time spent. Now, talking of Odia cinema industry, the Odisha cinema industry is in shambles right now. Till the early 2000s, it was thriving, and then gradually the slump began, and there was a lot of copy-paste scene by scene of South Indian movies, and at that time a lot of original content also suffered. And when finally the audience totally and completely finally rejected, and whatever was left was killed by the pandemic. So can you tell me what is it that has helped Bengali cinema survive? You've been a part of some wonderful films, worked with the best talent there. And can dying regional cinema be revived?
So I'm not the oracle when it comes to Bengali cinema, but I do know a little bit about it, and that's a qualifier I'm putting right out there. I think till the end of the last century, there were two types of Bengali cinema. One were of course, the art house masters, and I'm using that term gender neutral, whether it was Satyajit Ray, who passed away in 93, or Mrinal Sen or Ritik Ghatak, who passed away earlier, and Aparna Sen and Gautam Ghosh and Buddhadev Das Gupta, all of that. So that has very clearly been one part of Bengali cinema that consistently produced products 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. But on the other side, as I have been told, there was really nothing except really, really badly made so-called mainstream masala cinema. And I did a film called Onuronon, I think in 2001, if I'm not mistaken, which, no, that was Ontuhin. Onuronon was not 2005. Onuronon was 2001 or 2002. Ontuhin came later, if I'm not wrong. Or maybe I am, whatever. About 20 years ago. And I was told that that was the first, again, not my words, sensible middle-of-the-road cinema that brought back, again, not my words, respectable audiences back into Bengali theatre halls. It also coincided with the multiplexing of Bengal. Not Bengal, of Calcutta. And so, I mean, there were Pishimas and Mashimas around the block. I remember literally, in the West it's called the blue head crowd. But there was really, I mean, I keep joking that my core demographic is 60 to 80-year-old women, and clearly you don't fall in that because that's why you hate me. But that's my core demographic, and they were winding all around the block, around the multiplex, you know, literally. So, post that, for the next, now, whether it's Srijit or whether it's Kaushik or a host of filmmakers, they haven't looked back. I mean, right now, the writing and the blurring of lines between art house to masala, all of that, some of the very biggest stars in Bengal are working in middle of the road or art house cinema, working with Aparna, working with Tony and all these guys. So I know that now it's in really good health. But what unlocked it was the first, and I'm sure Onuronan might not have been the first, so my apologies, but that was the time when they said, we have to write better. Not we have to get respectable audiences in, or this is happening in the multiplexes. We have to write it better. And they began to write it better. And it hasn't looked back. So I think that's all that needs to be done. Now you have the multiplexes all over. All that needs to be done in any film industry, and I know nothing about the Odia film industry.
But isn't that true of pretty much the whole business as it was? Content ultimately has to be king. And if the writing is bad, it shows. That's the first thing that shows. So, why yes.
No, to get an audience that had abandoned the cinema halls back into the cinema halls, you have to give them something that actually they can bite on, as opposed to just the masala flim flam that I assume that's being made right now.
Yeah. But what I was trying to say is good writing is not something that developed in the early 20th century. Good writing has always been there. It is something that was not recognized. If you look at, sorry, I'm going to digress a bit from this particular subject. If you walk into any Bengali house, you will find that within 20 minutes they're talking about Tagore. What I want to say is that there are, I mean, Bengali literature is full of marvelous writers, not just Tagore. Bangladesh.
Sorry. This is all flaking all over me.
What's
Sorry.
This? Bangladesh is not only Nazrul. Bangladesh has got its own set of writers. So, what about the Bibhuti Bhushan in Bengal? The writing has always been there. It is the translation of the writing into another medium that really is should be the point that we are discussing, which will keep not just Bangla cinema and Bangla OTT alive. It will keep pretty much everything. Look at Marathi writing, for crying out loud.
Who's making that comment, Jayant? I didn't make that comment.
No.
The comment is that you have to give something to audiences that abandon the cinema hall to come back. The fact that good writing has survived across millennia is incontestable.
I'm not for God's sake, I'm not in a debate. I'm on your side on this. I'm just trying to point out that writing content is king. And how you interpret it, perhaps the interpretation began in the early part of the 20th century, of good writing, and therefore middle-of-the-road cinema started taking an interesting journey, an interesting route.
Right. So I think we have something there, because within 20 minutes they start talking about Tagore in a Bengali household, and within 2 minutes we start talking about food. So I want to ask Rahul Bose.
Sorry, why? I want to know the connection. I can't leave it open like that. If I'm talking about Tagore,
We don't talk
and
about
I'm
films,
talking
we
about
don't talk
food.
about literature, we talk about food, we keep talking about food. During breakfast, we discuss what to have for lunch, and at lunch, we discuss what to have for dinner, and that's how our time is spent.
It's a bit opaque. Huh.
So I would like to ask Rahul Bose, how many of these big films are going to be made anyway? How many Gangubais or how many Avengers will be made in a year? Would that be enough for cinema halls to sustain?
It's a very interesting question. The same amount that's being made, if not a little bit less, will it be enough for the cinema halls to sustain? No, no. Not with real estate prices the way they are, and not with so many halls and so many shows and so many, not halls, so many theaters within one multiplex. So they're going to definitely have to mine for product. How much can Hollywood or international cinema fill that gap? I don't know. Which is why I think you're going to have to produce stuff that is not just big budget, spectacular extravaganzas. You're going to have to produce stuff that is a step below that in terms of budget. Which is why I think that the writing will matter, because people are not going to go and abandon their phones and go into the cinema hall for a relatively non-razzmatazz film unless it has something to offer, and which is not being offered on OTT. So as I said, this is early days, and I'll speak to the guys at PVR and Cinepolis and all these places, because they're all friends and I can ask. But I think they would be dying for content after some time, because I can't see an increased production of these massive big budget only because of logistics. It takes too long. You can't be launching 3 massive films at the same time.
So the number of films that release exclusively in theaters before coming on OTT, that number might decline. But the overall number of films being made is definitely going to increase with OTT, right? Because a lot of scripts and stories which never saw the light of the day because of financial perspective.
You're saying films or films and series? Yeah.
Yeah, so do you think even if theaters, suffer losses, do you think it's an acceptable collateral damage because the industry is growing as a whole, more money is being made, more people are getting work, more stories are being told? Yeah, Jayant.
I remember you heard it here first, okay? And all of you remember you heard it here first. I think where we are going is soon there are going to be a chain of Netflix multiplexes, Hotstar multiplexes, Prime Video multiplexes, etc. They're going to take over the They're just too rich not to, because this is subscription based. I'm not dependent on anybody for money as a channel. It's subscription based. And as long as I can I'll have enough money to go and buy those multiplexes. And I'll run only Netflix, so it'll be a picnic for the family. You go there, see 5 Netflix films on a particular day for the cost of 1 ticket. Have fun. Move away from your television box. So
well, that's interesting, because Roma was a film that Netflix made, and then they put it in the theaters. But that was more strategic because they wanted it to do well in the Oscars and stuff. But it is interesting. I mean, I don't know how cost-effective it's going to be. I don't even know whether these platforms have the appetite to get into something that's not their core business, so that's not for us to say. But it's a thought. It's a thought, maybe, maybe not. But at best, theatrical business is a precarious business. It might seem very, very lucrative from the outside, but it is a precarious business.
There are people coming in. There's not enough material for multiplexes. So that's the impression one gets, since everybody started making films for channels. So what are the multiplexes going to do? They're going to invite the channels, hey, give us your material. And as Netflix, I would say, sure, but you're going to show only my films. And then that becomes mine. And so everybody makes money. Which I think is the least interesting part of this discussion. My apologies.
That sounds very interesting. But what about you, Rahul? Because you have forayed into direction and production. And of course you're an actor. So which of these roles do you find the most challenging?
I love the way she calls me Rahul Bose, in case there are Rahul Bose and Rahul Ghosh and Rahul Banerjee and Rahul Chatterjee. I'm talking to Rahul Bose. Yeah. Not the other Rahuls. The one she hates. God, it has to be direction. There's no contest. There's no contest. It's the most beautiful, exhausting, terrifying, uplifting, incredibly energizing, massively exhausting endeavor, because it's your head in front of people. And if somebody gets it, it's better than any drug. So, yeah, I think direction is just extraordinary. And you know, you have to be an architect, you have to be a psychologist, you have to be a musician, you have to be, just for maybe 2 or 10, 15 days of your life, you have to, it pushes, it tests every single corner of your creative brain.
Do you think it's more challenging when you're a producer as well, when it's your head and also your money?
You know, actually, the fights between directors and producers, I used to have during Purna because I was producing and directing. But I resolved those fights in 30 seconds. And some of them went to the producer and some of them went to the director. But I was very clear that I didn't want to harm the product, not the film, the product. So if this was going to harm and take away 1 crore, which meant that I wouldn't be able to go to 100 more cinema halls in tribal areas of Maharashtra, then I would not do that when I'm shooting. So it was for the product that I really had my eye there. What do I want this film to mean to people, both in its creativity and in its release? Because, you know, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it fall, did it fall? So, for example, after Purna released, I had the tribal secretary in one of the states of India calling me up and saying, I'd like to show this film to 2 lakh tribals, because Purna was a tribal, she was Adivasi, across my state. And we don't you have the rights, so what do we have to do? What documentation do we have to submit? How much money will you ask for? And I said, send your person to the office. I'm giving you a pen drive of the original film. You go and you show it to whoever you want for free. Because I'm the producer and I can do that. Of course, by then I had sold most of the rights to another very big company. I called them up and I said, listen, these 2 lakh tribals ain't ever going to come to your theater or going to subscribe to your channel to watch this film. So just let it go. And they did, to their credit. They said, you're right. It's an audience that never gets that. So as a producer and director, I love producing and directing together, because the decisions I take, and this is not, I'm not modest or immodest, are always in the best interest of the product. Whereas it's so stressful talking to a director or a producer when you're on one side. You know, I'm not very good at being nice to get my way. If I believe it's the right way, I expect you to see it. I don't have to be nice and show you it's the right way. The right way is enough. I might have to be nice if I want you to murder someone for me. But if it's the right thing to do, I'm not going to be unnice, but I don't have to bend over backwards for you to see that. And that's what you have to do most times when you're trying to get people to see your point of view.
I would want to mention here that when Purna released, we had an event where 25 women, they bought tickets for 25 underprivileged girls, and they went to Inox and they watched it together. So I think you remember we did that. So don't hate you that much. So the kind of exposure and expansion that's happening with OTT, do you think, your final thoughts, both of yours on this, do you think this is just the tip of the iceberg? What do you think the future holds? And what are some of the trends or observations that you would have you foreseen any kind of trends or pattern or observation that is going to affect the viewing behavior?
If I had trends and foreseeing qualities
you
or
did.
talents.
You said Netflix is going to own multiplexes. I mean, that's quite an observation.
Yeah, no. I'm talking about I would be a multimillionaire if I could foresee these things, but I'm not. I'm pretty broke. I would hesitate to comment on what trend it's going to take. Every human being is so different from the other one. What you like and what I like are two completely different things, and there are a million other opinions like that. I'm not going to comment on what trends there are. I don't know.
We used to say content is king and then distribution became king. And do you think content is king again?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's no question about that. Just one thing that Jayant had said earlier about everybody becoming a film critic and saying it's the fault of the art form. No, Jayant, it's the form of social media. It's the fault of social media.
I don't think it's a fault, please.
No, forget the word fault.
Yeah,
the reason everybody's voice is heard now is because of social media.
But is that a bad
absolutely.
thing?
There's nothing wrong with that, except, yes, social media occasionally, like Twitter, for example, as Stephen Fry said, has become a bit of a lavatory wall, you know. It's...
No, I wasn't saying plus or minus. I'm just saying the reason that we are hearing 100,000 reviews on the next day of a film releasing is because now they have a stage to be heard, which is social media. Earlier, everybody was loudly expressing their opinion as to how this guy should bowl and, you know, India should not have declared, but nobody heard them. Now you can hear it because they're all on social media. That's the only.
But, you know, they're all, including cricket commentary, are a part of now of the OTT and the OTA business. So, why not? It's all one thing. The internet, OTT, social media. सब तो एक ही चीज़ है. हम वहाँ some people are creating stuff for Netflix, and some people are creating stuff for Facebook, and some people are creating stuff for the Twitterati for the Twitter. So I'm quite comfortable with saying something like that, that everybody's a critic, and why not, is what I'm saying.
Sorry, I missed your question.
I think you answered it. That yes, content is king.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we've touched on that before. Just one more question.
Are we going to take questions from the audience?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Just my last question. How do you feel about labeling of films as an art film, a mainstream film, commercial film, festival film? Any good film has to be a piece of art, right? And any good film has to be should be accepted in the mainstream, or am I being too simplistic about it?
Yeah, you're being too simplistic about it. So here's the thing, and I've been asked this question at least 20, 30 times in the last 20, 30 years. A story to which you already know the plot as it unfolds is a mainstream film. हाँ, ये बड़ा ख़राब है, आदमी है, ये लड़की ये तो मरने वाली है, और ये दोनों लास्ट में जाएंगे happily ever after. We are a very emotionally acute audience, and we know. When you can see the whole film in front of you, and I call it, then what happens is you can taste your popcorn. Because if you're not watching, then you're tasting. You can't, the human brain can't take two senses in one cell at the same time. So I say these are taste your popcorn films because you know what's going to happen. James Bond will never die, right? But the films where you don't know what's going to happen, that for me is a film that is not formulaic. And then you can't taste the popcorn because you're like, hang on, oh, okay, that's the only way I can categorize films. So what happens is most times, even Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, it's a mainstream formula. Boy meets girl, they are strangers on a bus. What do you already know? They are going to meet. What do you already know? There's going to be chemistry. The only thing you don't know is whether they get married, or whether they don't get married, or whatever happens at the end. But otherwise, the entire construct is formulaic. The exposition is artistic. So a lot of people make the mistake of calling a film art house, in my definition, when it's not. It's not independent. It's an artistically wonderful rendition of a very formulaic story. It could be a big Bollywood film where two big stars are strangers on a bus, and each time the bus stops, they sing a song. And as the songs go on, they get, and then there are riots, and then there's the tragedy. You can imagine the scale of that film in terms of its pitch of its emotions. So, and I'm not saying films that are non-formulaic are good. They're terrible films that are made where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't even care because this is utter crap. So I'm not holding one over the other. I'm just saying that that's the distinction that I've learned to make. Can I tell what's going to happen next? Can I not? Then, whether you pitch the film in terms of its artistic sensibility here, or there, that has got nothing to do with the actual story. So that's the best way I can answer that question.
Thank you so much. We can take some questions from the audience now, if there's someone who can.
Yeah, I'll be glad to know both of your views, Jayant and Rahul. Will you ever get a Bimal Roy or Gurudat in OTT?
Sorry, again?
Will you ever get a Bimal Roy or a Gurudat in OTT? Rahul first, you can, and then Jayant sir, please.
I have one line. I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I echo Jayant's sentiment. The short answer is most probably no. Because the cinematic vision of these filmmakers was cinematic. It was not meant for this, There is something, the pause, the idea of silence is only felt in a cinema hall. You cannot feel that while you're watching something on just a film that is silent, many silences, to really get swept and sucked into that movie so you can actually smell that person's breath. You can hear their hearts beat. It only happens in the cinema hall. So that, what Bimal Roy and Gurudat, they were visual filmmakers. Their work deserves to be seen on Bade Parde Pe. And I think that, therefore, people who need to make those films should make them stoically and stubbornly for cinema halls.
And for your friends like Ajay Devgan and Salman Khan, is the 10 million view on a single day or 100 crore at box office in 3 days? Which is more important now?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Which is more important now? 10 million view on a single day or 100 crore in 3 days?
You're asking me?
For your friends like Ajay Devgan or Salman.
How do I know?
Okay, your view?
My view, my most important preoccupation is to get the moderator of the show to like me. That's all. After that, we look at the small things like 10 million or 100 crores later on.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Sujit Mahapatra. My question is to Rahul. I love the way you delineated, between the collective viewing experience, the social and the personal. In fact, the other day we were discussing about radio and audio books, and I thought the difference was very similar, the social and the personal. But to, take it further, when I talk about other collective viewing experiences like the theater, drama, or jatra, do you think that we might, given the fact that in many cases I might choose to watch my film not on the big screen but on OTT, do you think that going for a collective viewing experience would now bring back more interest in things like theater, where there is also a dynamism between the performers and the, there's a kind of interaction between the audience and the performers, like theater and jatra? Do you think we're going to have more of that?
I mean, you'll miss it. If you stop going to the cinema halls, you're going to be craving a collective experience in an art gallery or at a music show. You're going to want, I crave it. I crave a collective experience. So if I stop going to the cinema hall, I'll definitely transfer my cravings to other art forms. So I think it's inescapable that human beings love to laugh together and to enjoy something together. It's cathartic. I won't get into sports so much, but definitely in the arts. Even going to an art gallery, I think, is a collective experience.
The interaction you can't replace it by OTT anyway.
Hi Rahul, I have 2 questions for you. As you yourself said that we are a very emotionally involved audience in India. So when the shift from the theaters to the OTT has happened, are we going to have the big stars? Like earlier there was like this craze about Amitabh Bachchan or Rajesh Khanna, or you talk about Shah Rukh Khan. People say, oh my God, they are big stars. People idolize them. But now on OTT, when we have a stream of so many shows and so many cinemas and series, so are we going to get some stars out of it or just regular actors out of them?
No, it's going to be, it has nothing to do with what you're saying. This is my view of what makes a star. A star is somebody who has, by the force of her or his charisma and personality makes you crave to want to see him or her regardless of what they're doing. Regardless of how good or bad they are. You are sold on that person. Not only that, you tend to think you know the person. You tend to think you know what they'll shop for. You tend to think you know who they'll fall in love with. You index your emotional acuteness not index, you actually believe you know this person. So when that happens, and that is such an incredible quality to have, it happens with politicians also, where regardless of what they do, you're going to vote for them or you're going to watch their movies. That is charisma and a kinetic personality that somehow appeals to you. So that has nothing to do with OTT or television. There could be a star performing across the road, you know, at a bazaar, and everybody will gather around her. There's something electric about that person to you. So I think there will be stars as long as people get onto a stage and perform, whether it's for an audience of one or for an audience of 5 million. If you have that quality, automatically you're going to have that star quality. You're going to be a star. So I think there will be stars, even in OTT. Sooner or later, you'll have people running after them. Because it's more to do with, it takes more time. Because in a cinema hall, already the person is larger than life. It takes more time. But there will be people in all media who will have that star quality. And you won't be able to, they won't be able to hide their light under a bushel.
Can we have another question?
Hello everyone. My name is Sarada Prasad Mahapatra. And my question is for all three people. The transformation between the theater and then cinema and then to OTT, are we not creating couch potatoes in society?
May I just take the first part of this? The pandemic created couch potatoes in every walk of life. For 2 years, we were all couch potatoes and all bed potatoes and whatever you want to call potatoes, fried or boiled or mashed. I think at the end of 2 years, we were all pretty mashed potatoes. So I don't think OTT is going to create any couch potatoes.
Sir, but even cinema halls, you go and sit there. All viewing experiences, you can hardly be on the treadmill. Although maybe sometimes you can nowadays, but yeah, they're all seated experience. We are hoping that entertainment has never asked you to exercise.
We have to reach the cinemas and theaters for it.
Okay.
You can't watch it on your seat in the aeroplane.
This is true. This is true. I think it's become much easier to access. Very true. But, you know, that's not the evil plan of entertainment. Let's stop people from exercising. Let's start a company called Netflix. I think they must have had a slightly loftier aim or a slightly different aim. But yeah, that's a corollary. Sure.
I think we have more questions here.
Hi, I'm Abhishek. My question is for both of you actually. So during the 70s and 80s, we have seen the rise of art house movement. And with that, we saw the rise of Shyam Benegal, Nasiruddin Shah, Sabana Azmi. So my question is, with the OTT booming, will we see a revival of that kind of movement? Will there be an art house movement part 2? Or will it be dominated again by the typical masala Bollywood movie that we know?
I think that independent art house, for me, non-formulaic cinema, will always have its place, and it's had its place ever since the 60s. In the 60s, what began to happen was earlier, till the 50s, all the movies that you saw coming out of Hindi cinema were not art house or mainstream. They were one kind of cinema. They had nationalism, they had stories of the poor, and everybody watched them. In the 60s, you began to have, you know, silly, fun, let's twist and let's, you know, freak out. And then you had, you know, you began to have Satyajit Ray, and you began to have Bimal Rai, and you had all of that. And the separation began to happen then. But ever since then, whether it's the 60s or the 70s and Govind Nihalani in the 80s and Aparna in the 80s and 90s with 36 Chaurangi Lane and etc., or Arvindam or Adul Gopalakrishnan down south, you will always have a percentage of people in the world that think differently. And so they will automatically find their voice in whichever medium they can. Just before OTT, they were squeezed dry. Television didn't want them. Cinema didn't justify their costs. So they were going back to the theatre. So I think now with OTT, there will definitely be space. It will always be a limited space. It's not a space that has grown or shrunk, but it's a space that is secure. And with OTT, I think that the ratio, let us say it was 1:10, will still remain.
Hi sir, I am Anshuman. My question is, as the moderator said that COVID has been a major factor for rise of OTT. Has censorship also helped people or the filmmakers to migrate from theaters to OTT platforms? Because
OTT is censored now.
now it is censored, sir. But just before it was censored, do you think that was one of the reasons because filmmakers wanted to release their movies or their products on the OTT platform because they didn't want any censorship in that regard?
No, I think that by the time OTTs came on, people began to write. By the time they wrote and things came out, then the censorship started. It's a very brief window that people had. Maybe 6 months that window was. But that wasn't enough to create a thought that, oh, let's all do this because there's no censorship. It was very quickly nipped in the bud. The issues behind censorship is talk for another panel discussion.
We'll take the last, after this, Tanuj Purjwani, we'll take the last question from him. And
I just wanted to ask Mr. Rahul Bose, like cinema is facing a big piracy problem these days. Will OTT help it or worsen it further?
Piracy problem? Well, what is it being pirated on? Nobody watches DVDs anymore. On pen drives, maybe. You know, it's a piracy will always be there. It's kind of a left-handed compliment, isn't it? To have your film pirated.
imitation is the best form of flattery.
May I just add to that? I used to work for a video magazine called Business Plus in Bombay. I think this was in the 90s. We used to print 1,200 copies. That's all of the tape. We used to sell something like 9,000. I don't know where the readership or viewership came from. They were pirated. As far as I'm concerned, if somebody pirates my stuff, I'm not against it. Go for it.
Thank you. We'll take the last question from...
Yeah, I'm Tanima. I'm an editor with... sorry.
One second. Tanuj.
Yeah, just...
Thank you. I have a question for both. First of all, I want to appreciate your candor. Both of you came out, spoke about your careers, about this cutthroat industry, and, you know, brass tacks about how it works, and that's really not what you hear when you go meet somebody like us.
We didn't say cutthroat industry. I completely think the opposite. I think this is one of the most welcoming, inclusive, non-threatening, non-cutthroat industries. Having been there on the inside for 30 years, I can tell you, I've never felt anything to do with a rivalry or let's bring him down. Never. Never heard a word about that. Just to say.
I don't mean in a personal sense, but I do mean it's competitive. It is hard to get to rise to a certain stature, but you've shared your journeys. That's what I meant. Maybe cutthroat is not the right word for that. Where I'm going, I have a question for each one of you. One is on the feel of films. We've been talking about stars and content, but the thing that I've observed is that television used to look like television. It was 4:3, it used to use lower quality camera, lesser effects, and it used to look like something you view at home. And now everything is, you know, cinematic in that sense. There's sort of everything looks and feels in that same way spectacular. How do you think that changes what stories are told or what is told? That's for you, Jayant.
Tanuj, can we please limit it to one question?
Just a last thing. What do you think happened with Dabangg, right? Because you mentioned that the only other thing was cable. But Dabangg in 2011 was a breakaway thing and then became formulaic from there when it started hitting 100 crores and these big star movies and action and lesser focus on plot compared to your DDLJs and, you know, your K3Gs, etc. earlier. You know, Yuva in 2009, and all of your movies.
I'm going to link this to something that Rahul said earlier about people watching films on, on the cell phone. Yes, I think the process of filmmaking is going to change. Go back to Marshall McLuhan. It's the medium, ultimately. And you're going to have films with more close-ups, more expression on the faces, more personal stories. Of course, there'll be the big ones, the fantastic ones, but there'll be these also, the very small, so that they look convincing on this palm of my hand, and I can believe what is there. If you give me a long shot of somebody speaking with a mountain as a backdrop, no. I want to see this guy's face because it's there on my palm. So I think the process of filmmaking might change, might. I'm not promising that it will. But I'll just add one. Do we have time? I need 2 minutes. I need 2 minutes more. Yeah.
Okay.
Shyam Benegal used to make films. Since he brought up Shyam's name, I'm going to... and I ran into him one day and I said, yeah, what's this here? You've come down from... I have this disrespectful attitude to Shyam because we like each other very much. And I said, yeah, what you doing? You used to make films. No. And I used the word, and you've come down to television. और उसने कहा यार लात मारूंगा तुमको because you can't say come down to television. You've been on that damn medium, you know. But he says, why do you think of me as making television? I've made 52 episodes of Discovery of India, and I've made 52 feature films as far as I'm concerned. So the screen is small, 4:3, but they're still damn good films. So, you know, I hope partially that answers your question.
Tanuj, I have no clue about the second part of the second question of yours about Dabang. Honestly, if I had a clue, I would. But I'm not going to give you an answer without knowing. I really have no sense of that time and that question you're asking. My apologies.
We've run out of time. Can we keep it very, very short, ma'am? Because you started asking your question.
So, there was an interview of Shan in Brute India where he said that in OTT has reduced the value of music in films. So Indian films are more about music, but OTT is more about content. So somehow don't you think that the value of music has decreased, you know, because the kind of music that is being made in OTT content is not reaching the audience much. Only a few catchy numbers like that from Mimi, films like Mimi.
Thank you. I think we got your question. Would you like
I am very happy listening to music on Spotify. I don't have to watch OTT to listen to music.
I don't know. Let's see. Let's see when a really wonderful score comes up and it's not appreciated. Let's wait and watch for that, because till that happens, I still hold out great hope for people to turn around and watch a movie and say, you know, the songs were beautiful. Let's wait and see. Maybe it's early days.
हमारे ज़माने में हम लोग गाना सुनते थे, आजकल गाना देखते हैं. तो
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for all your questions and for being a wonderful audience. And thank you to both of you. I hope you enjoyed the session as much as I did.
Thank you so much, Rahul, Jayant and Tanaya, for those insights. On behalf of the Odisha FC Academy and Women's Football, we have Mr. Randeep Barua here. Can I ask him to come on stage, please? He's going to just hand over some T-shirts to Rahul and Jayant. Just for a second, if you can. The team jerseys, he's just going to hand them over to you. you. Thank you so much. Yes. We'll take a short break now and reconvene at 2:15 for the screening of a short film, and the next session after that will be at 2:30, titled Call of the Wild, The India Experience.
Check. Hello. Check. 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 Hello. Hello.